I think that what I wanted to say in this movie was to look at two things. One is the essential humanity of Opus Dei, two, the importance of that discipline. And today we're very scared of discipline because, in a rather adolescent way, we think discipline must be bad. Well, that's rubbish. Any sportsman knows that discipline is good. How else to become a good sportsman? And if you're an adolescent sportsman and you behave in an adolescent way, you get thrown out of the team. So what we expect in sport should be what we expect in life, it seems to me. And I think that's a very, very important thing, the beautiful thing that Opus Dei can do in its kind of work in the community. But added to that, there's one last thing, and that is that Jose Maria finds his inspiration in that girl, in the asylum he's hiding in, when the girl appears and says, God is silent, isn't he? And in truth, any of us who believe in God must wrestle with this question, well, why does God appear to be silent? How does the world get into this mess, and why doesn't God interfere? Well, God, in a way, does interfere. And he interferes, I think, in a very subtle way, because he interferes by offering us other human beings who are making different choices. And it's as though what God, if you like, is saying to us is, I'm not a little voice that spoon-feeds you honey whenever you need it. Indeed, the world as it is created, and created by human beings, I might add, is extraordinarily cruel. So in some senses, I am a monster. And if I'm God, I must equally be a monster as being good. I'm not some sort of do-gooding charity. But my monstrousness, if it is recognized, is seen also as the monstrousness of human beings, and that can be addressed. And how is it addressed? It's by you finding the love in yourself. Not that somebody gives it to you, it's there inside you, and that you pay attention to it and work at it. So what I like about Opus Dei, and what I really like about the movie in a way, is that constantly we understand that the religious learn from life experience. It's not that you cut yourself off from life, and Opus Dei very clearly says, no, be in life, find God in everyday life. And that's very clever when you think about it, because how would you find God in the Civil War? But you do, but we do. And oddly enough, we find him through pain and suffering. That doesn't mean masochistic pain and suffering, it means in the very stuff of life. It's as though life itself poses you a series of questions all the time. What do I do if I lose somebody I love? What do I do if I discover my child has polio? What do I do about the fact I'm going to die? Those are physical questions. And here's the surprise. The physical questions cannot be answered only by words, not by books, not by treaties, not by films, finally. They can only be answered physically in the end, because the only answer to a physical question is a physical answer, which is how you live your life. How does the person who's handicapped and crippled deal with their handicap? Do they give way to it? Do they find it inside them to fight it? How do we deal with the death of someone close to us? Does it make us bitter? Or do we use that to somehow make us love other people because we realize how fragile each human being is, that we know that everybody in this room has people who love them, and that everybody has a finite existence? Do we use that to be bitter? Or do we use that to love as deeply as we can for the little time that we have, all those around us? And so what we're discovering is that life itself offers us values. And I think that's kind of what I was trying to touch in the movie.
Thank you very much. We have someone here, Mr. Joffe, from one of our television channels. Your question, please.
How do you do?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Glenn from IBC 13, and I'm a writer. Hi. Hello. I'm Glenn from IBC 13. I just want to say to you, sir, before I give my questions, that how much I admire your works, such as The Killing Fields. It's one of my favorite films, and yeah, it really touched me. And yeah, so sir, my first question is, I actually have two questions, sir. So my first question is, what made you use of a real life character such as Saint Jose Maria Escriva and a fictional character such as Manolo?
Well, this is a very good question. In some senses, Jose Maria and Manolo are both the same person. You could say, in a way, that Jose Maria is the right side of the brain, and Manolo is the left side of the brain, because they're both dealing with life, the same life questions in a way. And here's a very interesting thing. Let me ask you this question. We all know, don't we, that we have two hemispheres in our brain.
Yes.
But why? We all know that, curiously enough, that one single hemisphere can actually, if we lose all the abilities in either left or right, the remaining hemisphere can take over all the functions of the other hemisphere. There's one odd thing about the way it takes those functions over. It takes those functions over without criticism, without division. It's though the way our brains have been designed, it's that the ego lies on one side and the non-ego, the adventurous, open, more religious side, seems to exist on the right side of the brain, which may be the senior side of the brain, in reverse what people say. And our egos live on the left side of the brain. And the ego, the left side, is the side that needs to plan things. You know, what am I going to do tomorrow? How do I get from A to B? When the two sides work in unison, you get a whole human being. If the two sides close off, and sometimes the ego side, the left-hand side, wants to dominate entirely, doesn't actually like the right-hand side very much. And I think a lot of our trouble comes from obsessively ego-based societies, which are obsessively left-brain, if you like. So part of the movie is saying, in a way, you can't separate these two men. You could look at this movie as going into the inside of José Maria's brain and seeing the side of José Maria's brain he doesn't listen to, that he forgives, that he relates to. So Manolo, in a sense, is an imaginative character, because he's drawn from many people José Maria would have met. But pretty much everything that I got José Maria to do in the movie is based on what historically happened. And that's art. I mean, you have to mix the two kinds of truth. The truth that's, you know, objectively, materially true, and that truth that can only be discovered by imagination. So the movie encompasses both of those.
Second question, sir, and this is kind of not related to the movie, but in your own words, sir, what is filmmaking to you?
Sorry, the speaker's a bit bad. Can you say that? My reception is not great.
Oh yeah. In your own words, sir, what is filmmaking to you? What is filmmaking?
Sorry, I still can't quite get the question. Not your fault. This line is not brilliant here.
Okay, sir. For the third time, in your own words, sir, what is filmmaking?
What is film
Making. What is filmmaking?
I'm sorry, it's not your fault. It's a really bad line. The speaker's not working so well. What is filmmaking?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because, sir, I am also a frustrated filmmaker.
I'll tell you what I think it might be. I think it's a spiritual experience. And I think it's a spiritual experience in two ways. One is, like spiritual enterprises, it doesn't work if it's not honest. Spiritual enterprise has to be honest, film has to be honest, won't work, neither of them. Two, it uses imagination. Spiritual stuff must use imagination. But maybe most importantly, it uses energy to materialize what's in the mind into physical form. So it's a strange way of dreaming, but it's a strange way of, if you like, mimicking what appears to have happened in the universe. But it's mimicked at a distance in the way that we as human beings can mimic the creative energy of the universe is. And of course, we're bound to want to mimic it because we're part of it. So I would say in very simple terms that filmmaking is a shared, at all level, experience, because you have to share, you know, your ideas into a script, which has to be shared with actors and technicians and then shared with an audience. So it's a shared spiritual adventure that has one overriding and overarching problem, which is it has to entertain as well as inform. I think that's the closest I can get to it.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.